Humphrey, the hippopotamus in love with his owner. In the endless steppes of South Africa, the sunset was painting the sky in the color of fire. While the red on the horizon was mixing with purple, the sounds of frogs echoing along the river accompanied the melody of nature. The cries of jackals could be heard from afar, and the wind was waving the long grasses in waves. Nature was performing its own theatre every evening. Marius Els was a child of these lands. He was dealing with farming, but for him, the soil was not only a job, it was a friend, a confidant. When he touched the soil with his hand, he felt his heart beating faster. That day, he was walking through his land as usual, but he was unaware of the surprise fate had prepared for him. On the bank of the river, swollen by rains, he saw a little baby hippopotamus stuck in the mud. Its body was wet and helpless, its eyes wide with fear, trembling like a child separated from its mother. There was neither its herd nor anyone to protect it by its side. It was as if it had been abandoned to loneliness.
Marius hesitated for a moment.
Hippopotamuses were the most feared animals of these lands. But in the gaze of this baby, there was no threat, only innocence asking for help. His heart outweighed his mind. He walked into the mud, sinking with each step, and approached the baby. The animal first panicked, but then fixed its large eyes on Marius's and rested its head on his chest. At that moment, time stopped. The noise of the sky, the roar of the river, everything fell silent. There was only a man and a baby. Marius took it into his arms and whispered, "You are no longer alone, little friend. Your name will be Humphrey." And thus began the extraordinary journey between a farmer and the child of the wild. Humphrey grew. At first, he fit in a lap like a baby, then he soon became as big as a calf, then a horse. His body grew heavy as stone, his muscles hardened, his teeth sharpened. But one thing never changed, his attachment to Marius. Every morning, he would wait for his owner at the door, rub his nose against him, show his love with his eyes, and Marius would touch him as if touching his own son, stroking his head. "You are my son, Humphrey," he would say. The villagers were astonished whenever they saw this sight. To them, the hippopotamus was one of the most dangerous animals in the world. Every year, hundreds of people were attacked by these giants. An old villager once came to Marius and warned him, "You cannot oppose nature. One day it will grow, it will become wild. What will you do when that day comes?" But Marius smiled with belief. "Humphrey is in love with me. He is like my child," and it truly seemed so. At sunsets, Marius would ride on Humphrey's back, and when they swam together in the river, their laughter would rise to the sky. Humphrey recognized his owner's voice. No matter how far he was, when he heard his call, he would run splashing through the mud. He would lay his head on Marius's knees and fall asleep in peace. But in the silence of the nights, there was another whisper, mixed with the wind of the steppe. A hippopotamus will one day be a hippopotamus. Marius ignored this whisper. For him, love was everything. He believed the boundary between human and animal could be crossed with love. And Humphrey kept growing. He had now reached 1 ton. The ground trembled under his steps, and as his body cut through the water, waves struck the banks. In the eyes of people, he inspired fear, but for Marius, he was still little Humphrey. One misty morning in 2011, the sky was covered with grey clouds. The river, swollen by rains, was carrying a raging anger. As always, Marius went down to the riverbank to see Humphrey. He felt an uneasiness inside, but his face still carried a smile. From the water, a giant shadow rose. Humphrey appeared, The breaths coming from his nose dispersed like steam into the sky. Marius's heart was full of love. "Humphrey, my little son," he said quietly. But that day there was a different glimmer in Humphrey's eyes, a spark that awakened his instincts, reminding the harshness of nature. Suddenly he rushed toward Marius. Before the farmer could understand what was happening, the giant body came down upon him, and they were both hurled into the river. His scream tore the silence of the steppe. Birds flew up into the sky. While struggling in the water, Marius looked into Humphrey's eyes. In those eyes, there was no anger, but a hard-to-understand contradiction, a chaos where love and wildness intertwined. Perhaps a silent whisper coming from inside the animal. "It is not in my hands." But nature does not forget its laws, and that day the river took Marius for itself. Humphrey was left alone once more. With his giant body, he disappeared into the waves, but he left behind a story. The story of a man's love and an animal's attachment. At the same time, the story of the cost of pushing the boundaries of nature. And from that day on, people always told this. There was a man carrying love in his heart. There was a hippopotamus in love with his owner. Their friendship still echoes in the wind of the steppe. If you stand by the river at sunset, maybe you too will hear it. A man's laughter, a hippopotamus cutting through the water, and then a deep silence.